We're throwing you off your game by sitting up here.
All right, okay, so call the meeting of the Landmarks Commission to order. Can we have a roll call, please? Apologies for my voice.
Alan Griffiths.
Here.
Robert Truca.
Here.
Nicole DeFreitas. There, sorry. Mike Meisner. Louis Schultz.
Here.
Ryan Whaley.
Here.
Hima Yandel.
Okay, first is the review of the minutes from June 15th. Are there any questions or comments from staff on the minutes? Hearing none, can I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
I'll second.
Seconded. Further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, minutes are approved. Let's see, we have one application, a number of ministerial approvals, and please take us through.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The first item tonight is going to be at 209 Fulton Street. It's for roof, window, and door alterations. This property is a contributing building in the National Register of Historic Places. The current use had been residential. The proposed use is residential. Project's going to be written or broken down into three parts. That's going to be roof, gutters, downspout, maintenance and alterations, window alterations, and then door renovations / alterations. The building was constructed about 1845 based on past records. It was originally called the West Market School. The structure is one of the original school buildings in the city of Sandusky. The structure was one of three what was called grammar schools built around the same time during the public school system's original start date back in 1845. This school was used as a school for 60 years based on historic records, and there are two remaining after talking to Mr. Schultz here. This is one of two remaining. The school was listed on the National Register in 1982. The inventory of 1981 states this. It's a vernacular building, has coursed and squared limestone walls with crowans, 2 doors with stone lintels and sills and transoms facing the street. Windows with stone lintels and sills, gabled roof with returns, and wide cornice boards complete the exterior. One upper window was made into a loading door in the early 20th century. The book At Home in Early Sandusky, Foundations for the Future, talks about the early school, and it states that these school buildings are very important structures to the history of Sandusky. So project scope 1 is going to be the roof, gutters, and downspouts. The applicant is seeking to renovate roof damage and repair rotting wood, which has caused water intrusion to the structure. The work's going to include replacing rotting wood pieces in the roof underneath the current shingles and to add flashing to protect the existing roof structure. Some spots, after talking with the applicant, are currently open to the elements. The most important, most crucial part of this piece of the application is that the applicant is wishing to add gutters and downspouts. Based on staff's previous look into the historic documents, it was believed to not have these two items previously as a historic structure. So these would be in addition to the historic integrity of the building. Item number 2 is going to be window renovations and replacement. The applicant is seeking to replace the same windows in size, location, and orientation of the current window frames. This work includes replacing rotted window frame jambs with new wood, and then also to replace windows with energy-efficient windows. And then project scope 3 is going to be the door renovations and alterations. The applicant seeks to replace the door in the same size, location, and orientation of the original door frames, and then to replace any rotted wood along the door frame jambs as well. And then replacing existing wooden doors, replace the existing doors with wood doors that more consistently match the original style of the doors of this structure. Based on staff's review, the West Market School has been significantly altered from its original condition. The front porch and lofted roof had been added in recent years. The current windows and doors are not original, or believed to be original, The roof shingles have been recently replaced, but the rotting wood was not properly replaced and manicured during the roof replacement. A certificate of appropriateness was not granted to the previous owner to add the porch and also add the raised roof. Staff spoke to the applicants who indicated that they have a strong desire to make this as original as possible and to meet the preservation guidelines, if at all applicable. The West Market School is a significant piece to Sandusky's history, and staff does applaud the applicant in their investment in the restoration of this building. Overall, staff recommends the granting of this certificate of appropriateness with the following conditions, and that's that all applicable permits are obtained through the building, engineering, and planning departments prior to any construction, and to fasten new downspouts to mortar joints and gutter support straps under roofing materials, match new gutter and downspout materials to similar materials of this time frame, and then to paint new gutters and downspouts to match the trim. Those were all pieces taken from the Sandusky guidelines. And then the third condition is to replace windows, they replace the double hung windows with aluminum clad.
I would add one more comment. We had a conversation with the applicant when they originally turned this in. The window material was not specified. And we talked about avoiding vinyl windows, and he was amenable to the recommendation of the aluminum windows. I also would mention that wood windows would be more accurate originally. If that is of interest, they would be much more expensive, but they would be much more accurate historically. So if the applicant would choose to do wood windows, we would definitely support that as well.
Okay. Are there any questions from Commission? I have just one, and this is really to staff and anybody with an opinion in the room, including, see Mr. Windell sitting here. I'm sure you've put some gutters on houses in this town over the years. Would this building have originally been built without any guttering or downspouts at all, or is it likely that what was there at some point just came off and wasn't replaced?
I can't see that had gutters.
At any point?
Well, but the real reason you see is the tuck pointing at the base is just destroyed from the water hitting.
Right.
It could have had wooden box gutters built originally, but it's so old that they might have not even done that. Yeah. Or that they had rotten off, and it could predate the use of those, or if it was such a vernacular building that they, it's not really got a lot of architectural detail to it.
Thoughts, Mr. Window?
Back in that time window, when I first was an apprentice.
Yeah, we won't say how long ago. It's okay.
Those type of buildings had what they call built-in gutters, where they actually brought the wood up and then they put 40-pound tin in and soldered it all in. It's called a built-in gutter.
Okay.
And then generally it was a maintenance issue over the years, and once a leak started, the wood underneath the building gutter deteriorated. And so when they did the roof, they tore the building gutters off. Just put the wood down and then exterior gutters.
Perfect. Thank you.
What it used to be.
Yeah, thank you. For the record, that's Mr. Ed Window, who'll be, I think, commenting later. So thank you for your input and expertise.
I do have a quick question. And Aaron, it's Aaron?
Yes.
Is that porch part of the building? Which, I don't know.
Because the cut in on the second floor on the right of the picture we're looking at exists, if that size is existing, or it appears to be original, there could have been an original porch there that was since removed, and then someone more recently put a new one on. One conversation for the benefit of the landmarks commissioners we talked about is if they keep that porch and do a railing, doing something that has like the guide wire support so that you can see through really well would be more appropriate to this building. So you can show off the limestone because that's the most historic character. But yeah, I would say if you inspect that opening in the previous picture that Mr. Oakes showed, it's certainly a large enough opening to be a door, which would indicate evidence that did have a porch originally.
So should I submit another application for that proposal?
to do the porch?
Yeah.
Would you mind coming up to the podium and chat? And
Oh, I'm sorry.
we're being
Yeah, yeah.
a little
That's my
informal,
fault.
but just
No,
for
if
the
you've got
minutes.
questions, we just need your-
If you come to the podium.
You just come up here to the podium?
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry,
Just
sir. And we
'cause
just
then
need
the
your
mics
name
will
and
pick you
address
up.
for the record.
Chris Allpelt, 1535 East Tynesville Road, Hudson, Ohio. The question was, should I put an application in for that new railing that we discussed?
I believe the answer to that would be yes, because the guidelines state that if you're making any changes to the property, you would need a certificate of appropriateness, regardless if the changes are on a non-historic element.
Okay, so that will go through regular Sandusky, and then you'll deem it whether it goes through the landmark.
Right.
Okay.
So there's some things we can improve administratively. It does say that we can do porches, so as long as it's not anything like big and crazy, we will probably be able to administratively approve it,
Much cleaner
but we
than
tend to be conservative with those of what we bring to the board or
Okay,
not.
it's going to be much safer than that. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from the commission or thoughts?
Chair, I think the idea of adding a gutter is, gutters are, whether they were there or not in the past, is one of those examples of like, how did we live without the internet before? Like, there's a reason that gutters exist, and it's actually going to do more to preserve that building longer than the latter. So I think this is a great addition, and we should approve it.
Any other comments? And just for the record, I'm all in favor of adding the gutters. It was more of an interest question. Okay, hearing no further comment, should we take a vote?
I don't know if you had a motion yet, but I have
Oh, I'm sorry.
one comment from staff, just to make it clear for the record that I would amend the staff recommendation to add wood as an option for the window replacement
Okay.
material.
Can I then have a motion on this particular application?
I move that we approve the application.
I second.
Okay. I think staff would like an amendment to include the option of wood windows as well. Can I get that amendment?
As long as your motion to approve includes staff recommendations, I think we're covered.
We're good? Okay, it does. Any further conversation? All right, can we call the vote, please?
Louis Schultz,
Yes.
Alan Griffith,
Yes.
Robert Truca,
Yes.
Nicole DeFred, I don't know how to say your name, I'm sorry.
DeFreitas,
DeFreitas,
yeah. Yes.
Ryan Whaley,
Yes.
Perfect, thank you, and congratulations. Good luck with that building. I've been in there a few times. My brother-in-law used to live in there. I won't make any comment about whether or not he's responsible for the current state of it.
It looks much better inside.
Ryan's also been in there for the same reason.
I'm going to assume it's cleaner now.
Okay, we are moving on to administrative approvals.
And I'll say real quick before Mr. Oakes starts on these, we have a pile of these since we haven't had a meeting since June.
Yeah.
And so he's going to abbreviate the presentation just a little bit because we have so many. But if you want to have a further, larger discussion about any one of them, please let us know.
Thank you. The first administratively approved item tonight is going to be at 219 East Water Street for a gas meter inset to the property there. It is a non-contributing structure in the downtown Sandusky Commercial Historic District. It's currently used, I believe, as residential, and its proposed use is going to be residential. The applicant proposed to install a 15-inch by 17-inch gas meter to the recessed area into the brick wall of the southern-facing exterior at 219 East Water Street. The back and the side walls of the recessed area will use the same color scheme as the existing door frames, as closely as possible to the existing color. Staff recommended preserving the historic limestone footer along the edge of the building and matching the materials to match this color. Staff also had worked with the applicant to find a best place for this to cause as minimal damage to the historic structure as possible. The sidewalk was discussed, but not a realistic option. There's no side walls between the structure and the adjacent one. They are connecting buildings, so an alleyway or to the side of the building was not an option. And putting it in the public right-of-way more close to the street was also not an option. So this was in fact the best option that the applicant and Columbia Gas and staff had worked with to determine this was the best one. This work was completed with minimal impact to the structure and has visual experience, still keeps the visual experience of the building. There were no No guidelines were negatively impacted by this request, and staff granted administrative approval for the recessed gas meter on June 23rd of 2022.
I will also mention that this was a really creative solution because Columbia Gas would have been happy to just put it right in the sidewalk, and it would have been a real tripping hazard and an eyesore. So it was a creative solution that the Windows thought of, and they had some extra space because there's a closet right when you go in the door. And I met them on site, and they joked that they had, between Columbia Gas and the city, they had like 22 people out there that had to get eyes on this and approve it. But it was a great conversation. I think a really good outcome.
You did the work. It looks really nice.
Okay,
I just think
yeah.
a couple things. Aaron was absolutely right. 21 people looked at it before we could do it. That seems a lot.
And Mr. Window, sorry, before you start, just for the record, will you give us your name and your address?
My name is Ed Window, and I live at 221 East Water Street.
Thank you.
And it is a condo, 219 is a condo.
Yeah.
And yes, we did have 21 people look at it between Miller Pipeline, Columbia Gas, city engineer, city building department, Aaron, I mean, it was, and, you know, Columbia Gas had 5 people that had to go up the chain, and nobody would do anything without her approval, or this landmark's approval. But just a couple things. I just want to thank everybody that's sitting here for donating their time to run this landmark. We believe in the landmark. We think it's a good thing. I think we see some areas that we'd like to see improved with landmark, and I'd love to bring those up at some point. This actually went, from the city standpoint, smooth. It was just all the other. And the reason that we did it when we did it was because the city had indicated they were going to resurface Water Street, and this faces Water Street, and we didn't want them to put the surface in and then have the gas company follow in, cutting the brand new street up and putting the gas meter in. So myself and Mr. Hare across the street put new water service in, we put a new gas service in, and now, after some delays, the street is finally half down.
Mm-hmm.
But those are a couple of things, and at some point, if I could have maybe a few minutes with the landmark to make a few suggestions on how it could be improved and more user-friendly, I would love to share that.
We'd welcome that, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, what you've done to those 2 buildings, it's a work of art. It's beautiful. It's a real asset for the whole community, I think.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I think, you know, I know you turned it from your shop, your workshop into your home, but I think it sets an example for a lot of the previous industrial use buildings that we have downtown, many of which are being worked on, but as we start to look at the footprint expanding further out, there's other opportunities to do something similar, so thank you. And I'd just like to welcome Commissioner Brady and ex officio mayor to our meeting.
You know, I'm not going to miss an opportunity. I had to verify with the law director if public comment was permitted before I came tonight, but obviously I'm here to support my friend Ed Window and to reiterate, overall, his experience with this was excellent. I know it took a lot of people to do it. Mm-hmm. That's cumbersome sometimes, and if we can streamline it, maybe we can cut that down from 22 to, I don't know, 15 or 16, but I can tell that this committee is open-minded to doing that, and we're more than willing. I hope we're always going to be willing, and as sure as you are, to hear his comments on how that can best serve the public. And he kind of stole my pitch, because the reason that I show up at these meetings is not to bird dog any of you. You all know what you're doing. You do an excellent job. But I got to show up to thank you for what you're doing. And this only applies to the people who are doing it for free. Staff, you're getting paid for it, okay? But the reality is this city runs on the backs of hundreds of people just like you volunteers. If we didn't have them, we would be like a beautiful smile missing a couple of teeth. And really, I know that You don't do this for the notoriety, because there isn't much of that. You sure don't do it for the money because you're not getting paid. You do it because you want what we want. You want to make the city just a little bit better. And Landmark Commission's doing that. Government moves forward 3 inches forward and 2 inches back some days. I see that almost every day. Don't be frustrated by that. I try not to be frustrated by it. We are all moving the city forward inches, sometimes feet at a time. So thanks for what you're doing. I'll get out of here now.
Thank you very much. Also, just for the record, I'm in it for the free boat ride. Thank you. Okay, next.
Next item is going to be 215 and 217 East Water Street. It's for a seasonal outdoor dining space for Saucy Brasserie. This is a non-contributing structure in the downtown Sandusky Commercial Historic District. The existing use is a business and the proposed use was a business. The applicant, Saucy Brew Works, originally proposed to install approximately 34 feet by 18 feet of a temporary metal barrier fencing used for this outdoor seating area. The proposed fencing was going to be black and have hanging flower boxes for beautification. This proposal was updated to 2 concrete structures shown on the screen here with planters with an attached metal bar across to prohibit car access into this dining space. Originally, the proposed dining area was going to consume approximately 6 public parking spaces. Staff had worked with the applicant and recommended shrinking the dining area a little bit to preserve 2 extra parking spaces. The applicant took the staff's recommendation, and the layout only consumes 4 public parking spaces now. The design character of the change matches the color and materials of the existing trim of the facade and aligns with the city's preservation design guidelines. The work completed has minimal impact to the structure itself and the visual experience of the surrounding buildings. A seasonal encroachment permit was issued by our Public Works Department and expires on 10/31 of 2022. Of 2023, this patio would require a new seasonal permit and application for appropriateness if any design changes are made. If the current layout stays the same, they would not need another certificate of appropriateness from staff. Staff granted administrative approval for the seasonal outdoor patio installation on July 7th of 2022.
And I'll mention a couple comments just for context. So the Landmarks Commission is only concerned with what this looks like, but just a little bit more context on how this approval process works. So you can get a temporary encroachment permit basically when you put anything on city property. So that's what they pursued through our Public Works Department. And in 2020, when it got really popular to expand outdoor dining because people wanted to gather safely, they updated their temporary encroachment permit to allow the use of parking spaces for dining. We went down there and it was really loud in the other 2 spaces. It was right by the trash can. And I was like, people like to huddle. In a party, everybody ends up in the kitchen because something has to be right sized for the amount of people that are going to use that space. So we really encouraged them to take up fewer spaces. That way we had less of a parking constraint and really see this as kind of a pilot project. How does it work this season? They only have the permit it lasts till October 31st, 2022. So if they want to do this in the spring, they'll have to come back for another proposal. And they worked with the engineering department and proposed the concrete flower boxes because they would be much more of a permanent, or not a permanent, but a rigid safety barrier for their folks on the patio. I asked them for a really pretty picture with actual humans sitting there enjoying dinner with the umbrellas and everything, but they didn't get back to me. This is kind of the solution they came up with, and they didn't do the side rails so that their deliveries could still go in their back door. We worked with, we were in communication with the windows because they had some semis parking and blocking the residential parking driveways, and so we worked with them to hopefully that had a better outcome. I think we should talk about that, but I'm just curious if you all experienced this patio this summer, if you have any feedback for staff, if and when they come back to us in the spring and want to do it again, and, because it was a temporary kind of test to see how it worked out.
Yeah, I've been through there a couple times with my girlfriend and the dogs. I feel like this was already completed by Iron Man. I can't really remember.
It was, because Iron Man was July 21.
And this was June.
Right?
It was.
Yeah, July.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, I liked this because it was open and it seemed a little bit more, just kind of open and free-flowing. So, we were just walking, we didn't mean to stop to get a beer, but it seemed like a great space, like we didn't have to go through a lot of twists and turns. We're like, oh, there's a table. We can just get right in, get a beer, enjoy it, and then, you know, continue enjoying downtown. So, you know, I thought it was a success.
Mr. Window, go ahead. Yep, sure. Love to hear from you.
As Aaron said, there were some issues. But you can imagine, this actually started, this application with city back in May.
Mhm.
This process started. We, who own all the buildings, the next 3 buildings, didn't know anything about it. Knew nothing about this happening. And then one morning I looked out and there was a crane blocking our driveways and garages, setting these 3 concrete structures. Okay? And to that point, the delivery trucks would pull in there and unload. But that stopped immediately because obviously they can't walk through the metal bars, so they pull down and completely block our egress to our building. Contacted the city, and Saucy Brew management has been nothing but perfect. They've done everything they can to make this work. They're great neighbors, and great neighbors are both ways. But they're trying to change some truck drivers' mentality, and that's difficult. Okay, now if they brought, and I've got pictures of certain days when they block it, and you know it's unacceptable. And so, you know, one of the improvements I think Landmark could make would be, rather than getting the shock and the anger that I experienced by a crane setting these things down and knowing the trucks are going to block me in every day, would be to notify the people in the Landmark District of a hearing by email or whatever, so that at least we could say beforehand, we can put this fire out before it erupts. And that was one of the improvements that might be worth having. The other thing I have a question about is for snow removal, as you see how they're sitting there, when the snow plow comes down, it's going to turn in and plow them garage doors closed. And according to the documents, they have to move those in the winter. Okay, and if they want to move them down against the garbage building, which is down a little bit farther to the west, put 3 of them there for the winter, I'm okay with that. But the street sweeper can't get in there in the summer. He used to come right up to the curb and clean the street, but now he can't get in there with that. There is no bar that goes back to the building like the proposal said there was going to be. And the proposal also said those were going to match the red on the furniture, or the color of the furniture, and the furniture that they bring out is all red. Now, I sat over there and had a beer too. I enjoy the patio. I certainly have no objection. I sit on my deck right there and listen to the guy play his guitar. Marvelous. But there's some bugs we got to work out. And the question I have, and maybe it's not for Landmark, but maybe Aaron can get the answer, would be, how do we make sure that these concerns are addressed before we reissue another certificate? Okay. And basically, the solution that I think will make it work for the Window properties as well as Renaissance properties there would be if the trucks drove from east to west and then unloaded versus going west to east, which my building's east of this, and parking in the parking areas there. And that would be the solution, in my opinion. Not only would they not block my building, but all the reefer trucks, refrigeration would be farther west than it is when they're directly under my deck with the refrigeration units running. So those are some things that need to be addressed, and it's not for Landmark as much as for some department in the city to deal with this. But for Landmark, I was wondering, how do we enforce or follow through that what they say they're going to do they do?
That's a great question.
Okay? And just not related to this, but if you leave here and walk down Market Street and look at the building you reviewed the sign on, there's 2 4-inch B vents sticking out the sidewall that look like hell.
Sorry,
Okay.
which building?
Ash.
Oh, okay.
Right? And how did that go through? And now that it's there, how do we eliminate that? That destroyed that side of the building. Ryan's seen it. And I'm not saying, so I guess the point is, if you try to follow the rules, you work with you, but if you don't follow the rules, what do we do? Those are some concerns I have. But just my suggestion is make sure that, I'm going to rephrase this, Darren, make sure that the windows are involved before a permit's issued next season, and make sure that we have whoever from Saucy, they've been fantastic as far as helping, doing whatever they, if the truck blocks her, they'll go out, knock on the door. And the police were called once, and he came down and said, what do you want me to put a ticket on this guy? And I said, no, I don't want you to ticket him. That's not I don't care about that. I just want you to document that he's blocking it. And I got pictures of every day they blocked with dates. And when we have this meeting, we can go through these things and make it so that all the neighborhood can be positive. The other question that I have is, what prevents anybody else from coming in and asking for 4 spaces? And is there a parking committee? There used to be. West Pool was in charge of it. Now the employees used to use that to park, and now they're down east of that to the next available parking spaces. And they start to actually get so far down, they encroach Ryan's area where his customers park on the back. So those are some concerns. And so I guess my question is this committee going to do the enforcement to make it like they said they're going to do it? And please make me aware of where the meeting will be before the next application is approved for use. Thank you.
Thank you. So just a couple comments in direct response to you, Ed, if you don't mind. One is that obviously the use of the parking spaces by an applicant isn't something that we have a remit over. That's Public Works and for the City Planning Department. So I'll kind of leave that there. On the issue of compliance, clearly we have compliance in our ordinance. We have the ability to enforce compliance.
And inspect.
I'll be honest and tell you the problem has always been staffing and time to do it. And there is a code compliance department of the city, as we know. We've seen the cars driving around, and we fall in their remit in terms of things that they should be looking to enforce. So I think there's probably a conversation with the city commission to say, hey, can we make sure that landmarks issues are on that list? In terms of notifications, I'd have to double check our notifications requirements for meetings, but we come under the same sunshine laws as anybody else, correct?
Right, so any public comment can be taken at any meetings for agenda items. We don't conduct, the Landmarks Commission doesn't conduct public hearings, so there's no notification, there's no notification requirement to send out letters to surrounding properties, because the way our ordinance works is that they're not under public hearing notification requirements.
When's our meeting agenda posted?
Our best efforts are to get the meeting agenda posted 1 week before the meeting with agenda items online on the city website. So the Landmarks Commission page has those agenda items.
Okay, understood. And I understand that asking the public to go and check that.
That's how I knew there was a meeting tonight.
Okay, all right.
But when Mr. Whaley wanted a mural painted on his wall, I got a notification of that.
Yeah, it's a good example of the.
And I responded with a written letter saying that we obviously had no objection, but thought it was a marvelous thing to do.
Right.
And we would see that from our buildings, especially our rooftop deck. And so I was under the understanding that if you were an adjoining or property owner, you would be notified before the crane
Yeah.
showed up.
So the mural was an Arts Commission thing, right?
So the mural, what he's mentioning is that because that mural, so he's talking about the paddle and climb building, because it faces a public right-of-way, murals on that facade would be subject to our sign ordinance, and the sign code dictates a specific square footage maximum, and the mural's much larger than a square footage maximum per our sign code regulations. So that went to the Board of Zoning Appeals, which is a public hearing. It's actually an adjudication hearing that requires public notice. So within 300 feet of a property owners, all property owners and occupants, thank you, get a notification.
So, and again, this is a process thing that I should know and I don't, and if anybody does know, feel free to chip in, but we approve an application like the one we approved earlier in this meeting. There's nothing in our statute or in our ordinance that says that there's the notification to neighbors, et cetera, like Mr. Wendell's talking about. But is there one issue, when it gets to construction permits and that sort of thing by the city, should they not be issued at that point?
I think the only time something like that would be issued is if it directly affects an owner's property.
Okay.
In this case, everything was taking place within the public right-of-way, so it's public property. We do have, the right-of-way encroachment permitting process is done through our Director of Public Works, and there's not a notification requirement in that case. They're often approving things that go inches into the public right-of-way, like we need our post for our handrail to be embedded into the sidewalk for ADA safety, things like that. So they don't have a notification process. In this case, and Mr. Wendell and I spoke about this at the beginning, this is the first time we've done anything that has that's taken parking spaces in a more of a temporary nature. It was kind of a new thing. There are full-time residential occupants right next door, and I apologize for not just reaching out to them just with that thought of, the neighbors might be really curious of what we're doing and why and when, and it would have been nice just to give them a heads up, but there was no legal requirement to do so.
Okay, so I would say a couple things. One is, I think your feedback, Ed, in terms of the issues around street cleaning, some of the issues around snow removal, my understanding is those will be gone, hopefully, before it snows any more than it might have done today. It's certainly trying. But those are well taken, and certainly issues that staff can take up with the relevant agencies in the city to make sure that we have a process for that. Whether it falls on the property owner to clean that portion of the street as they're using it, or there's some other way that we do that. So those are well taken. In terms of notifications from this committee, it's certainly something we can look at. We are in the process of redrafting our ordinance at some point, correct?
Guidelines.
Or guidelines, I'm sorry. So when that happens, it's certainly something we can look at. And there may be times when it's appropriate for us to do that, but we're not doing it at the moment. So I would appreciate that. The one other thing I would say, as I said earlier, in terms of having a meeting with some or all or those of us who are available, I'd be very happy to do that at some point in the near future. And so we'll get that scheduled and invite anybody else on the commission who can and wishes to attend that. I think that's valuable. And going forward, the reality is we are seeing more and more of the usage of the frontage on Shoreline Drive now by restaurants like Saucy and others. And so these kinds of issues are going to keep coming up. And, I think it's appropriate that you raise them, and it's appropriate that as a commission from a landmarks perspective relating to enforcement and for the city, for the staff to be looking at these things as we get into a new round of permitting, because this probably won't be the only one that comes up in May, I'm sure. So appreciate your input. Thank you very much. Any other comments from commissioners?
Yeah, Mr. Wendell, did you say that was originally supposed to be a railing facing that image on the left side?
The drawing showed the railing going back to the building.
And there is not
I
a railing?
could answer that question.
Okay.
Please.
Go ahead.
And drawing that I have from the city that they submitted show another rail that's similar to the one that's going between those, going south towards the building. And the issue is this has nothing to do with landmark, but it could be gray area. And Brian may shed some light on this, but my understanding is if you're gonna serve alcohol in a non-door cup, it has to be a fenced-in area. Is that accurate?
That, I'm not sure when it expires, but that did change during COVID.
Their sausages do their own brewing, and they don't put it in a door cup, they mark out and they give it to the people sitting at the table, me included.
They can do that, or I don't know when it expired. Like I did it in front of Volstead for a while, I don't anymore, but during COVID, they laxed the laws on that, but I don't know if it expired or not, or where we're at with that.
Well, I guess basically if they have the rails going to the back, and I'm not.
It wouldn't matter then,
because that
yeah.
makes it worse to unload. As you can see where the loading
Right,
dock is, it's way west of where, they unload to the east and we load by car all the way to the west.
So why was there not a railing put in?
So their original proposal was yellow temporary fencing all around in the rectangular shape. Then I suggested they do black instead of yellow because of like the preservation guidelines asking not to do really bold colors and to add planters like they have in the front. And then they came back and asked about the concrete, which I approved because I thought it was safer, and didn't mention or document that pivot from whether it had side. I expected it to have sides and it didn't, but I thought that probably was helpful with the delivery issues that Mr. Wendell brought to my attention, so I didn't pursue trying to get them to and do anything different. And that's why, we made the promise when they come back, assuming they come back in the spring for another approval, to have a larger conversation about this internally and invite the neighbors to give feedback to the Director of Public Works, who ultimately will approve that approachment if they get another encroachment. And one earlier comment about where these are going to go, they have to be completely removed from public property by October 31st, according to their permit.
Any other comments? Okay, Mr. Wendell, thank you very much for coming and for your input. Are you staying for any more? You're welcome to. You won't get a free boat ride if you don't, sir.
I'm good, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The next item is going to be at 127 and 133 East Market Street for some marquee signage. The existing use of this, this is a contributing structure in the downtown Sandusky Commercial Historic District. The existing use of this building is a business. The proposed use of these buildings, are businesses. There are two signs that were approved for this certificate of appropriateness, both of which are marquee signs, just different shapes and colors and designs. The current mobile pin sign is a replacement of what's existing. The Marketplace Downtown marquee sign is a new addition. They are going to replace the mobile pins in the same size and location. That's what's there based on the application. These did not exceed our zoning code signage requirements. Staff determined the signage meets the requirements mentioned in our guidelines. The final approved designs of these marquee signs consist of acceptable designs with simple graphics and simple messages. The shapes are appropriate, the colors are not fluorescent, and the colors included are primary colors, and the backgrounds are not white. Staff granted administrative approval for these marquee signs on August 25th of 2022.
Any comment? All right, moving on. Thank you.
The next item is at 101 West Market Street. This is for wall signage. This is a non-contributing structure in the downtown Sandusky Commercial Historic District. The existing use and the proposed use are both businesses. It was vacant for quite some time, but the new use is a business. They propose to place new wall signage to replace the old jeweler signage at 101 West Market Street. In the similar place and location, the sizing varied a little bit, but in general, they're very similar. both on the southeast corner facing south and facing east. The new signs do meet the zoning code requirements. Staff determined that the sign meets our current guideline requirements. The final approved design of the wall signage consists of acceptable designs with simple graphics and simple messages. The shape is appropriate, the colors are not fluorescent, and the colors included are primary, and the background is also not white. Staff granted administrative approval for this signage on August 25th of 2022 with the following conditions, and that's that the previous signage is removed prior to any new signage installation.
Mr. Window mentioned it looked like the building had been damaged. We made sure that they were supposed to remove the old signage from Birch Jewelers because we have an abandoned signed ordinance to make sure that old signage is removed. So what you're seeing, if you go take a look at that building, there's edges that were the shape of the old signage that they didn't account for thinking about when they designed their new signage that they would be different color because they haven't been exposed to the elements for however long the Birch Jeweler signage have been there, and they removed it by, looks like, just kind of shaving off the bolts, and they remain so they're quite visible when you walk past the property.
And if I may add to that, it may be too late, but it does say in our guidelines that they are required to paint any, I don't want to say damage, but any previous signage and anything it covered they're supposed to repaint to the existing building colors. So I don't know if there's any enforcement mechanism that we can get.
Using my British heritage, could we write them a strongly worded letter?
we could ask them nicely to
I think maybe just
give that a
phone
touch
call
up.
or an email,
Yeah.
some communication to say, hey, you were supposed to do this and it doesn't appear to be done. Can you please look into it?
And if I may, I'll read it right from the guidelines. It says, discolorations that exist on the facade from previous signage should be removed.
Okay.
So.
I think we just remind them of that and ask them to take care of it.
Thank you, will do.
Any other comments on that? Okay.
Excuse me. The next item is going to be 128 East Market Street for a storefront renovation. This is a contributing structure in the downtown Sandusky Commercial Historic District. The existing use was business, and the proposed use is going to be a business. The project scope is window and door replacement. The applicant seeks to replace the aluminum frame windows and door with bronze frame windows and door in the same size and character of the existing. The applicant also seeks to remove the white panels of aluminum frames at the existing foot level and replace them with black aluminum to match the window frames and door color of black. The proposed window and door replacement will increase the curb appeal of the storefront while maintaining the historic significance of the building. The changes are minor and appropriate according to the Secretary of the Interior Standards and the Sandusky Historic Guidelines. All items to replace are not original in design or material to the building. It's unclear when specifically, but staff is extremely confident that it was not original and therefore do not count as distinctive materials directly pulled from our guidelines, nor contribute to the historic significance of the building. Staff determined that this was appropriate and a minor change. Staff granted the certificate of appropriateness with the following conditions, and that's that all the permits were obtained through all departments, and that no brick is painted as part of the project. Staff granted administrative approval on this project on July 19th of 2022.
Comments?
The next item is at 114 West Adams Street. It's for exterior paint color alteration for the Sandusky Library. This is a contributing structure in the National Register of Historic Places, both the library and then the connected old jailhouse. It was all under one application. Existing use is a library and the proposed use is staying in a library. They propose to unify the trim and cornice colors of both the library and the jail. The current colors of those two buildings are not the same and do not match. The library proposed, if you look in the right corner, it's a gauntlet gray. It's kind of a medium shaded gray. Based on historic pictures, it seems that the jailhouse cornice and facades were a lot darker than what the gauntlet gray is. So historic pictures do indicate that this is an accurate change. Along with the library in the bottom left corner, it might be, bottom right corner. It's tough to really tell, but there is a lighter shade of gray than what's existing. So based on those findings, staff determined the paint meets the requirements mentioned in our guidelines. Staff determined this to be a minor change and more closely matches the original historic character. Staff granted administrative approval on September 1st of 2022.
And on this one, we normally, with a really prominent building, take almost everything to it was fully in accordance with our guidelines because it was not a garish color. And there's something in there that says when structures are brought to be like more cohesive to the character in the street, like they wanted it to match and not be two different colors. So they said, hey, what do you think about us? This was white. What do you think about us painting it gray? We have good evidence. It's not always been white, given by the photograph in the bottom left. So we're like, oh yeah, we're totally comfortable with that. They were on a timeline because of the weather changes coming, and I was really comfortable approving that administratively.
I grew up on West Adams, and my mom worked at the library, and I feel like the jail had been painted white since the 80s. But so it's interesting to see these old photos. So that's gonna look really nice. Yeah.
Any other comments? Okay. It's possible it just needed to wash in the old photo. It's all good. Yeah, I think it's great. Thank you.
The next and final administrative approval for tonight is for a fence at 209 West Fulton Street. This is a contributing structure in the National Register of Historic Places.
It's the same building we already talked about.
Same building. We separated it due to time constraints. They wanted to put their fence in sooner. And we could also administratively approve the fence, so we went that direction. So they are putting in a vertical wood privacy fence along the back and side property lines and up to the front facade of the house. If you see the picture on the right there in purple, that's where the fence will be located, and also a 3-foot decorative iron fence painted black. It's unclear on that drawing how far it's set off, but I believe it's 3 feet from the sidewalk is what we determined in the permitting process. So staff determined that the fence does meet the zoning code requirements because it's the material, the color is going to match the black. And then also the orientation of the wood boards, the guidelines say vertical wood boards are appropriate. So staff determined this does meet our zone requirements and our historic guidelines based on height, design, placement, color, and materials. Staff granted administrative approval for this on October 7th of 2022.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on, do we have other business? Other
That's
than
it.
setting up a meeting with Mr. Windell.
One more staff comment. We do have 2 applications for next month, so we will have a meeting.
All righty. With that, any other comments or questions? Or can I have a motion to adjourn, please?
So moved.
We are adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
staff, for all your hard work over the summer.
Thank you.